Thank you very much. I'm humbled to be here, and I'm humbled that each of you have decided to come and listen to me instead of somebody else. So thank you very much for coming. You probably are wondering, why Star Wars? Star Wars, that's kind of a strange thing to have. Well, it's science fiction. And people think that neuroscience is science fiction too. It's something that we can't grasp or understand. So that's where we come into science. Is it really science fiction? Some of it might be, but some of it's not. And I contend that what's in Star Wars will soon not be science fiction. We'll probably have lightsabers, maybe not in my lifetime, but I think they're coming. We'll find probably people on other, well, life forms on other planets. So it's not really science fiction. I think it's here to stay. So a little bit about me. I've been in industry for more years than I care to think about. I've been in Fortune 500 companies. I've been in small business. And right now I'm a professor as Bill was kindly to say, at American Public University. And I love teaching because you see what's coming through the people's minds and you see them grasping onto things. So, whoops, that was supposed to be taken out. Okay, so here we go. For brain science, what do we need to understand? So how often do we try new things? Well, that's me up there, as you can see. I decided to do a triathlon last year. It was something I hadn't done in 25 years, and it's been shown that we develop new pathways in our brains for as long as you're living, till your last day. You are developing new circuitry in your brain. Now, it was thought that once you reached adulthood, that didn't happen. And I'll discuss that in a little bit. But how many of you have tried something new in the last year? It could be needlepoint, great. It could be cycling. It could be doing crossword puzzles. It could be doing woodwork. It could be anything. This year, I've decided I'm going to learn how to paint. I can't even draw a stick figure, okay? Now, I went to this place called Painting with a Twist, and they took 6 people, you took a bottle of wine and some cheese, and you just started painting. And we were doing the Eiffel Tower with a little lake in the front and Starry Night. And I'm thinking, well, I'm going to come out with something looking like a Picasso cubic painting here, because this is... I came out with something that looked like the Eiffel Tower. It was just amazing to me. And I thought, wow, if I know the tips and tricks and then practice it, I can rewire my brain a little bit to be more creative, because I am not very creative. So it's very important that each of you try to do something new every opportunity and practice it. It doesn't mean just doing it once. So crossword puzzles, don't just do one. Do it and keep it up, and you'll do different circuitry in your brain. So how does this fit into teams and leadership of teams? Well, let's get there. So has anybody heard of Moore's Law? It's a techie thing. Moore's Law says on an integrated circuit, the components on it will double each year. Well, Moore's Law has actually gone out the window, okay, because we have millions of components on a little circuit. So I'm sure somebody will come up with a different law. But I'm having troubles here. But technology is in the workplace. I don't care if you're in a mom and pop shop or if you're in the biggest corporation in the United States. You are going to have technology, and it's going to change, and people fear that. We have many generations now in the workplace. We have the silents, which were from World War II. There's not many of them, but there's still some. We have the baby boomers, of which I'm one. So we just got into a little bit of technology. We also have the Gen Xers, and then we have the Millennials, my dear Millennials. Millennials are one of those that ask questions all the time, and they want to know what they're doing and why are they doing it and how does it fit into the big picture. I think that's great, but a lot of people take that as offensive. So we have to be able to meld all those different generations. The silent generations won't ask a question, they just put their head down and go do it. The baby boomers like me, we were somewhat rebellious. So we were a little bit rebellious in the workplace, but we accepted it. And then you had the Gen Xers that understand technology. They were the first ones that really got to technology. And then finally the Millennials who will take technology and just push it for all it's worth. So many senior leaders understand that they have all this talent in here, but they're not getting the results they want. The CEOs, the COOs don't understand why they've got all this good talent and why some of the good talent is leaving. And I'm sure you've heard in many of the meetings that people are leaving because if you've got good talent, they just put more on them, and you get burned out. I know, I've been there. Okay, so I would like you to think of the Brain Performance Institute. I was privileged to go and hear a talk by them. And the Brain Performance Institute has two sections. They have academics, and all they do is study the brain. And they do functional MRIs and MRIs of people doing new things. And they were the ones that proved that you have new circuitry happening in your brain anytime you are doing something new. So that is a given fact. That has been shown by research. We've got that down. They also have the business side of it. On the business side, they take what the academics have done and put it to practical use. So one of the things that they've done is they have worked with wounded warriors who have PTSD and made those functioning citizens. Now they do this pro bono. They also have taken, and I found this very fascinating, there was a stock boy at Target. He had Asperger's syndrome. Everybody understand what that is? A type of autism. He had autism, didn't want to deal with people, just do his stocking. Through their learning and creative ways of learning, he is now a general manager at a Target. Can you imagine that, going from stock boy to general manager when you don't even want to deal with people? That to me is just fascinating. So let's go through their 3 steps. They have strategic attention. They have found out that, and this is probably going to be something that nobody wants to hear, our brains are not wired for multitasking. We are sequential. But yet, I used to multitask. I was a mother. When you're a mother, you have to multitask, especially have more than one child. But our brains are not wired for that. You may multitask for a while, but you are not going to be as effective unless you start doing things sequentially. So from there, once you get that sequential part there, you go into integrated reasoning. And there's 3 parts to integrated reasoning. There's zoom in, zoom out, and zoom deep and wide. Zoom in is most likely going to be CPAs, maybe lawyers, accountants, financial people. They really love to go into the details. They do mathematics. They love that stuff. Zoom out, that's where I am. I tend to take strategy, so themes that the CEOs and the C-suite come up with. I take those strategies. I review what's in the environment and decide which projects and programs will get us to that strategy. And you'll hear many CEOs say, I never can get strategy done. Well, it's possible to do with project portfolio management, which is just coming into the place. And then you have zoom deep and wide. Zoom deep and wide are those in the C-suite. They're the ones that are the visionaries. They can see out into Star Wars. You know, they know where they want to be in 10 years. They know what it looks like. I'm horrible at that. I can't do that. But I can take what they do and do a zoom out. So what does this have to do with teams? In order to get to the mental flexibility and the innovation, teams need to do different things when you're in it. So for example, if you're a zoom in person, the leader of the team might say, hey, I want you to be the leader of the team. Now, a zoom in person is going to kind of look at you and say, really? I don't want to do that. They need to do that because it creates different pathways in their brain. Now, you don't just stick them there and say, good luck. You're going to help them through it, and I'll show you some techniques for doing that. A zoom deep and wide, you may have them do the zoom in stuff. You're going to do all the budgeting. You're going to do all the detail work. Now, what do you think that zoom deep and wide is going to do? They're just going to look at you the same way that the zoom in person that you'd put into the zoom out area, saying, I don't think so, okay? But they need it. The reason you need it is to get to the next area, which is mental flexibility and innovation. To be mentally flexible in innovation, you need to be able to go to these different integrated reasoning strategies. If I'm constantly a zoom deep and wide person, I can't see what you're doing in the zoom in area. But if I get to that zoom in area, maybe not doing it constantly, I have different pathways and I can see things differently. Just like you can see things differently if you're a zoom out or a zoom in person. If I get that zoom in person and get them to do the deep and wide, then they can see things, oh, wow, that's why the CEO did that. That's why I can step out and do things like that. So you need to look at those 3 strategies of integrative reasoning and make people feel uncomfortable for a while. So, why are we exercising teams? We exercise teams so that you can get their minds thinking in different ways. And the way you do this is increase yourself and the team. So one of the strategies on the left, yes, my left, sorry, you're right, I guess. Yes, my left, is increase yourself and team. So one of the things you can do is productivity management. You go in and you set the tone, you set the goals, you set the vision for the team. It might be developing a document. So then if you have, like I said, a Zoom-in person, you might make them the leader and say, okay, you're going to take the whole team and get them to get this document developed, or this product, or this new service, or this new innovation, whatever it might be. You then have to tell that person, well, look, this is what it looks like at the end. This is what it's going to be. This is how I'm going to get them there. Okay, stress management. Stress management is something that we need to make a little bit different for them. There needs to be a little bit of healthy stress, and there needs to be a little bit of healthy conflict that gets the innovation and creativity going. So stress management, you want to bring them all together into the stress management area. And then we have critical thinking. When you get all of this together, people start doing critical thinking and decision making. They can look down and say, I know how I'm going to get to this final goal. And they do problem solving. They get together and they understand all of that. So what are some of the management tools? You manage your day. We all know what we're going to do. We go into the workplace and say, hey, I'm going to do this, this, and this. But you need to be flexible. What happens if you have a fire drill? Now my calendar's out of sync, or my list of things to do are out of sync. Or my child gets sick and I have to leave. You've got to be flexible, and going into those zoom in, zoom out, zoom deep and wide helps you get to that flexibility where you don't get so stressed out and so overwhelmed that I can't do it. So this helps people when they have new technology, or you have something that's been introduced, or the environment is changing. They say, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to do this? They are able to get through that and understand why the corporation is doing what they're doing. Think about the final goal. Help them understand what the final goal is, and help them understand the different ways of looking at it. So for example, I'm going into a meeting with the team as the leader. Now, I'm not the day-to-day leader. I'm the leader of the organization. And you may want to do inquiry type of questioning. So you go in there and you ask them strategic type questions. How's it going? Where are you at this time? How are you getting there? You're not telling them how to do it. You just want to push the creativity and the answering of what they need to do. So then while they're doing that, you then say, something's going on here. So you might say, you switch to advocacy. That's where you go in and you direct the team to do something because they're not going there. Now, advocacy should be used very little. In fact, you should only use it maybe one time out of every 10 inquiries. So advocacy is not something that the leader should be using often. Now, you may have a team member that's not doing well, and this happens. We all know that. Or we may have somebody that's just not getting it, doesn't have a skill set. Or maybe they have the skill set and they're lazy. That can happen too. So you will bring them in, and you can use the drill sergeant and mothering technique, nurture versus drill sergeant. So you bring them in and you tell them everything that they're doing good. You might do some inquiry, asking them what they're doing, what's going on, what's going. And then at the end, you be the drill sergeant, the advocacy. You tell them, you will do this, and this is how you will do it. That may get them out of the sink of being so overwhelmed that they can't get to where they need to get. So how do you do creativity? How do you get this team to be creative? I'm going to say something that corporations don't want to hear. You don't need to be in a cubicle. You need to have your own office. How many have cubicles in their office, that use cubicles? I worked in cubicle land forever. Remember I said that our brains are wired to do sequential? If you're in a cubicle, you cannot be sequential. Think about it. You're there trying to do, you're focused on what you want to do, you're looking at it, and you say, oh, wow, somebody's talking on the phone. They must be sick or something. They're talking to the doctor, or maybe they have. So your brain just automatically goes to that. Now you have to refocus. Now you hear a couple of people thinking about where they're going to lunch, and then you think to yourself, oh, I'm kind of hungry. I might want to go to lunch too. And now you have to refocus. If you have your private office, you can focus. You can also put on your door, please do not disturb, or you can have special hours that say, during these hours, I am focused. Please do not call me. Please do not email me. Please do not come and knock on my door. Now, of course, if it's an emergency, people know that they can come in. You wouldn't want to stay focused during a fire drill, for example. And I know some people that are. They get so focused, they are truly in a different world. Another thing you can do is have open common space. Now, this would take place at the cubicles. You get rid of all the cubicles. And you might have some creative things to do. Has anybody ever seen the life-size Jenga? Does everybody know what Jenga is? It's where you take out blocks of wood and you try to keep the tower up. Have that. It brings people together trying to do things. And it's sort of like the water cooler that we had when I was first starting as a baby boomer. You get around the water cooler and you start talking, hey, I've got this problem. Have you ever had the similar problem? What did you do? So you get those creative juices going. The younger generation don't like water coolers, obviously, but they like to play games. So give them a Jenga, give them a foosball. Do things that get people together, not individually. Have sofas, have chairs, comfortable chairs where they can get together and kind of just say, oh, wow, let's do this, let's do that. Or, wow, I had this problem, how would you solve it? Just like we did with water coolers. You also need to have some breakout rooms because the teams will need to get together and individually come together and say, okay, we've got this problem. Maybe the document is not formatting correctly. I'm using a very simple thing. So they come together and say, wow, Word is not really doing it. How can we get around that? What can we do to do that? So you get 2 or 3 people from the team that look on a specific thing. Now, maybe these are all the Zoom in people that have been assigned Zoom in. Or maybe they'll bring in a Zoom out or a Zoom deep and wide in to give them a different perspective. Okay? You're trying to create mental flexibility. And teams sometimes will change. So you may have been assigned as the team lead, but because of what the team is doing at any one time, they may change that and decide, oh, this person might be better for that. You as the leader need to monitor that because you want to make sure that everybody's getting their Zoom in time, getting in their Zoom out time, and their Zoom deep and wide. Okay? And I really would suggest that you go out to the Brain Performance Institute, and if you download this, there is a URL there to go there. They have some fascinating articles on what you can do with your teams to get them there, okay? And you'll see in there they say, no Jenga, they say Jenga, but no cubicles, don't do multitasking, do sequential, okay? So the Tuchman Model, forming, storming, norming, then performing. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Tuchman Model. So you as the leader of the team need to help the teams get to performing as quickly as possible. And you can do that in a number of ways. We are inherently social creatures. We don't like to be on an island by ourselves. Now, there are times where we want to be alone, but eventually you want to get with family or you want to get with other coworkers because you just need that interactive time. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you need to have socialization. So teams, even though you may have naysayers say, no, I want to do it all on my own. Just assign it to me, I want to do it all on my own. They need to work in teams. That is the way we get creative. That is the way we get innovative. And CEOs are they're pounding their heads against the wall because they say, I've got all this talent, but they're not doing anything. Well, one of the first things that goes in companies is training. I know when budgets get tight, the first thing that goes is training. Well, that's one of the ways to become creative. If I can take training in something that I've never done before, then I'm creating that circuitry and I can see differently. Many times it's online training is the only thing. And sometimes it's very primitive, the online training that they offer in. It's better than nothing, But sometimes you need to have something that really sparks you, that really lends you to think about something differently. So if there's training out there that you can do that, and the Brain Performance Institute has some suggestions, then it might be a good idea to look at it and bring it into your organization so you can get these people to be creative. People like to be creative. We like to be inspired. I'm a morning person. When I get up in the morning, I love to see a sunrise. Now, some of you might love to see a sunset or a flower, or you've cooked something that's fascinating. You take the different flavors and put it together. That's inspiring to all of us. And that makes me want to go and do something good for the organization or whatever I'm doing that day. If you can be inspired, you can be innovative and creative, but you got to learn how to harness that. And you can't do it if you're totally a zoom-in person. You can't do it if you're a totally zoom-out person. And you can't do it if you're a totally zoom-deep and wide person. Now, they all have their areas in the organization, but they need to come together and be creative and flexible. For example, think about the Post-it notes. I'm sure everybody here has used a Post-it note. That wasn't created to be a Post-it note. I have no idea what it was supposed to be created, but it was an absolute failure. It was somebody on that team that said, hey, wait, we can take this Post-it note and make it for something else. And this person said, look, I can write notes on it and stick it here. I can put it there. I used to have Post-it notes all over my laptop. And I still do, but now they're electronic. I'm sure you've seen the electronic Post-it notes. So that's what creativity is about. AT&T, when I worked there many, many years ago, did you know they created the cell phone technology? They absolutely created it at Bell Labs. They didn't know what to do with it. They said, this is worthless, it's never going anywhere. How many of you have a cell phone? Yes, or a smartphone. They put it out onto the open market, and guess what happened? Somebody who is innovative and creative, those that can think out of the box, took the cell phone, and gosh, where would we be? I wish I sometimes didn't have my cell phone, but where would we be? You know, I think about it. When I was learning how to drive, I didn't have a cell phone. If I broke down, it was, oh my gosh, what do I do now? Now kids just pick up their phone and say, hey, Dad, I broke down, or Mom, help me. So with the Tuchman model, you need to be doing the same thing with your creative juices in there. You need to spark them to think out of the box. If they're a techie, tell them to look at it from the business perspective. There was a techie at HP. He was the head technologist. He was from India, and he was working on a way to power cell phones using cow poop. Yes, you heard me, cow poop. Now, why? It's because in India, cows are sacred, and there are cows all over the place. Obviously, there's a lot of cow poop. So he was actually developing the way that people in India would be able to charge their phones and do Wi-Fi on their phones with the manure from the cow. And everybody could do it. There was no cost to it. And he was successful. And now people in India have their cell phones. Can you think about being so creative that you're using something that you would never use for technology? But he was a person that zoomed in, zoomed out, and zoomed deep and wide, so he could think out of the box. He was very creative. And that's what you need to be trying to do for your organization. When he told us that, of course, the whole room started laughing, but then he showed us how they did it. Okay, this is a survey that was done by PricewaterhouseCoopers. It was for CEOs, and they asked the key issue: how have talent constraints impacted your company's growth and profitability over the past 12 months? Well, as I said, I'm a project portfolio manager, so I take strategy and find out what needs to be done within the organization. Do we have all the projects? Do we not? And look at canceled or delayed a key strategic initiative, 22%. Imagine how much money that was to the bottom line. You can't get your strategy done, and then maybe the CEO gets fired because the strategy doesn't. Now you have a big upheaval in the company because you bring in a new CEO, and then it starts all over again. Unable to pursue a market opportunity. You didn't have the creativity or the innovation to actually create a new whatever to bring it out into the marketplace. That goes to your bottom line, 24%. But the one that I found very fascinating was talent-related expenses rose more than expected. Now, is that due to turnover? Probably. But I would like to think that that's a good thing because they've brought in new talent and new training that makes you creative, that makes you innovative, it makes you zoom in, it makes you zoom out, and it makes you zoom deep and wide. But I'm suspecting it's not. I'm suspecting it has to do with turnover, that they're losing their good people, because the good people, as I said, if they're doing great work, how are they rewarded? They're given more work. And you can't reward people like that. They get burned out. There's only so much you can do. I left HP for that reason. I couldn't stand it anymore. I never go home crying, never. And I came home crying one day, and my husband looked at me and he said, quit today. Well, I did. That was a Friday. I quit on Monday. I just couldn't stand it. And if your health is suffering for it, why would you stay? There are companies out there that value their people. So tying this up, oh, these are the references I use. So you can look at those. You can see the Brain Institute, the CEO survey, and I use Cezanne. But tying this up, neuroscience is in its infancy right now. It is getting ready to go into the toddler stage and explode. So neuroscience is getting ready to walk. They're getting ready to understand really how our brain works. We'll be able to cure people of PTSD. We might be able to cure people with autism by telling them how to do things differently because their brain rewires. We used to think that, oh, if you were born with autism, you're born with autism. There's nothing we can do about it. But the Brain Performance Institute has proven that that's wrong, okay? So I challenge each of you to go out there and look up some neuroscience. I'm not a neuroscientist by any means. I read some of that stuff and I think, really? But I go back to the end and I try to read the conclusions and recommendations and look at that. And then I look at what people are doing with that information and saying, wow, can we do that in our organization? That would be great. I would love to do that. So with that, I thank you. I challenge you to go and look at neuroscience some more. And any questions? No questions? Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.